Okay, back here, guys. Did a little podcast last night, and I'm excited to say that I'm back here. I'm trying to cover that light behind me to give you my preview of the Big Ten. And the Big Ten, it's actually just got to do it today because Big Ten is playing in a little over a day in Dublin, Ireland. So I will be doing some work, but I am going to try to watch the game or on my smartphone, and hopefully I can check out a little bit of Nebraska versus Northwestern. I'm going to put this article up on the sportscast.net, so please check it out. Follow us on Twitter at sportscast.one. Also check us out on Facebook and on YouTube. And we had a college football preview yesterday, so check that out on YouTube, and you can also check it out on Apple. I think it's on Spotify, iHeartRadio. So go check it out. So the Big Ten, the best I can say is this year, I think. So I've talked at length about my formula and the baseline talent, and Ohio State has been considerably the most talented team in the conference for the pretty much past decade. They have been the one team in the conference that's consistently been in the top 5, consistently in the top 10 even. Whereas, like in the SEC, you have obviously Alabama, but then you got a great rosters in Georgia, and you've had great rosters with LSU, and you have A&M that has a good roster now, and Florida's even been in there. Consistently, the only team that's been really that top 5 roster, that elite roster, has been Ohio State in the Big 12, in the Big 10, and that's not going to change this year. The divide has not been closed. Ohio State continues to land top 5 classes. Well, really the rest of the conference, you get a top 10 class from Michigan or Penn State once in a while, but they aren't consistently putting them together. And the gap between the top tier kind of the guys on the roster for Ohio State and the other teams in the Big Ten is pretty considerable. Michigan and Penn State are they're 14 and 15 in my they're pretty much exactly the same. Actually, they almost have identical roster talent from a baseline perspective. Obviously, Michigan's been a little better the last couple of years. They made the college football playoff last year. They won the Big Ten last year. Prior years to that, Penn State was a little better, winning the Big Ten, competing in New Year's Six Bowls. So I still think those teams are the talent-wise, and I'm going to be consistent with kind of the results. I think Michigan and Penn State have good enough teams on both sides of the ball. They have good enough athletes, good enough players to, they will compete for the Big Ten title, and if they can pull off an upset over Ohio State, and especially if Ohio State drops another game, Penn State and Michigan can sneak in and win Big Ten titles. I think the Big Ten East, well, the champion has come out of the Big Ten East, if my memory serves it right, for 7 or 8 years in a row. It's been mostly Ohio State, so I'm trying to do this off memory. Michigan State won it once. Michigan won it once, and Penn State won it once. Ohio State has won it since 2000, since the college football playoff era. It's 8 years. Ohio State's won it 5 times. 1 time for Michigan State, 1 time for Penn State, and 1 time for Michigan. I know Michigan State was fairly competitive last year, and they almost, I'm like literally falling down. I'm going to move over here. This is really uncomfortable. I'm like literally falling through the couch. That's fun. Sorry for the moving around, kind of. Where was I? What the hell was I talking about? I'm in this couch. It's like falling down and falling through the couch, and it's just my pets' heads are falling off. Dumb and Dumber, everyone, if you've never seen it. If you've never seen Dumb and Dumber, I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't even be watching my show. It's like a classic. But Michigan State, I don't think they had a great year last year. Obviously, Mel Tucker's done a terrific job putting that team back to getting that team back to the top and getting a roster that's better. I still think there's some holes. They lost a player like Kimball Walker, who was possibly the best running back in college football. I don't think it's that easy to replace. Jarek Broussard, who's a good running back for Colorado, transferred in, but I would expect a drop off in the running game. Lost some good other players on defense and stuff. He's did pretty good in the portal. They have a good class this year that's going to be coming in right now in the 2023 class. But I think Michigan State's going to go back a little more towards 7-5. I have them 8-4, like 7-5, 8-4, kind of in that realm. Penn State's the team that I talked about this on the podcast yesterday for the college football preview. They're the team that I'm curious. I'm really, really curious about what they're going to be this year. James Franklin landed a top 10 class last year. He has a top 15 roster talent again. But the last 2 years, COVID was weird, so I'm giving everyone a bye. But he was 4-5. They were not a good team. Then the next year, last season, they were 7-6. They really finished poorly. Is he going to turn around? Is he going to go back to 2016, winning the Big Ten? Then the year after that, being 11-2 with Saquon Barkley. Then the year after that, was it the year after that? Maybe it was 2 years after that. They ended up 11-2 and they played in the Cotton Bowl and they won the Cotton Bowl. They had 3 or 4 really good seasons, and he was recruiting super well. Obviously, landed guys like Saquon Barkley and Micah Parsons and Jason Owa, and they had some really phenomenal guys. The last couple of years, they've had some good players. Dotson, the wide receiver, was a first-round draft pick. They had some good running backs, but they have kind of stymied out. They've had average quarterback play with Sean Clifford. They weren't as good defensively last year. They overall did not have much other than Dotson on the offensive side of the ball. In general, they had a pretty good defense. I mean, they had a guy like Brisker, who was a good player in the secondary. But they definitely have taken a step back. They've taken a step back on the field. Combined, what is it? Off the top of my head, it's 11-11 over the last 2 years. Can they go back to being the Penn State that they were 2016 through 2019? Can they be that Penn State, or are they trending back? Are they trending back? The first couple of years, Franklin struggled, and then he obviously won the Big Ten and turned it around, and then he struggled the last couple of years. I can't say that James Franklin in his, I'm going off the top of my head right now, but I think he's been there 8 years. First couple of years wasn't great. Had a bunch of great years in the middle there, winning Big Ten titles, making New Year's Six games. Hasn't been great the last 2 years. Where is James Franklin? Has he hit his ceiling? He's a good recruiter. He's gotten NFL talent there. He's gotten first-round draft picks there. He's won offseason recruiting titles. He's been in the game, but when he can consistently win. I don't know the record offhand against Ohio State, but I think it might be like 1-7. His record against Michigan, I think, is like 2-6. That's not great. I mean, he needs to be better against his 2 biggest rivals, and especially with the talent definitely being as good as Michigan. Like, Ohio State does recruit at a better level. I understand it's going to be difficult to beat them. But Michigan, no. They don't get better players than Penn State. Penn State has just as many NFL guys. Their recruiting rankings, they've been some years Penn State's better. They had a better class last year. They had a little better roster talent a couple years ago. So they're pretty even right now. I think that should be really one of those things where Penn State can win that every other year. They should not be losing it every single year like they have been to Michigan recently. So I'm curious to see that. What else am I curious with? In the Big Ten East, I have it 12-0 Ohio State, Michigan 10-2. Michigan's 2 losses being to Iowa. I just think that game on the road, Kinnick Stadium, earlier in the season, I think Iowa will still be a pretty good team that has hopes of winning the Big Ten West. I think they upset them. Penn State, Off the top of my head, I don't remember which games I have them losing. I believe I have them losing to Michigan, Ohio State, and I have them losing to Auburn. I'm not super confident. Auburn's in trouble right now as a program, but it's at Auburn early in the season, so Auburn, the wheels haven't fallen off yet. The first two games are actually very easy for Auburn. I think Auburn will be able to get the crowd behind them, the energy. I think they'll be able to get Penn State at home, but I would not be shocked if Penn State won that game. Michigan State, I have 8-4. I think Michigan State, I have losing to Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, and I haven't losing another game. I can't remember the other game. Maryland 6-6. Rutgers 3-9, and Indiana's 1-11. Just don't have a lot of talent. Weak at the quarterback position. Ohio State easily wins the division. What do I think? It could be a tough game for Ohio State. I mean, at Penn State. At Penn State will be always a tough game at a wide out. I think Michigan and Michigan State, if I'm not mistaken, both play at Ohio State. I think Ohio State will beat Michigan. I think it'll be a good game, but I think they'll beat them significantly this year. I think they'll get revenge on what happened last year. I think overall Ohio State's just better than Michigan, I think, on all levels, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think Michigan's lost enough. I think they're still going to be solid defensively, but I think they've lost enough that they'll take a slight step back. And I don't know how much offense can step forwards with Cade McNamara. If they have McCarthy, J.J. McCarthy, I think they have a little more higher ceiling because he's a better athlete. He's a guy with a higher upside, but he hasn't won the job yet. And McNamara, I think has more of a ceiling. I think it makes where Michigan can beat most teams. I just don't think they will be able to score enough to beat Ohio State. In the West, this is the division I am unbelievably curious about because Wisconsin, I think, on paper, when I just look at them, they have an experienced quarterback. He's been a little inconsistent. He had a great opening debut to the COVID season, but then since then he's just been going down. But I think Merch steps up a little bit. They always have a good offensive line. They've recruited extremely well. They have pretty much all blue chippers across that offensive line now. And Braylon Allen is, outside of Travion Henderson for Ohio State, is probably the other best running back in the Big Ten, and I think he'll have another very good year. They have a couple good young receivers that because they're going to be able to run the ball well with a good offensive line and a great running back, I think it'll open up the passing game. I think Wisconsin's going to be pretty good. Now, I don't, believe it or not, have them winning the conference, and it's more because who they lose to. I actually have, believe it or not, Nebraska winning the Big Ten West. And you're like, well, what? They've never won the Big Ten West since it became the West. I think it changes this year. They've been so close the last few years with Scott Frost. They've played well. Their team looked good last year. Defensively, the defensive line unit was solid. Could run the ball. But they would make mistakes and lose games at the end. They lost game after Iowa. They lost at the end. Michigan, they lost at the end. Oklahoma was close until the end. I could go on. Michigan State probably should have won that game. They lost it at the end. They found a way to lose 3 or 4 games. They should have been at least 6-6, if not 7-5. And instead, they were 3-9. I do believe they will be better this year. And good enough that I actually think they'll. To be honest, I don't actually know if they're going to be that much better. I just think they're going to win those close games. I think they beat Minnesota. I think they upset Wisconsin. And then, yes, I think they actually beat Iowa at the end of the season. I think there'll be close games. I just think instead of losing them, they'll win. They'll learn from the mistakes. I think Scott Frost, he understands that he's had 4 losing seasons in a row. He needs to win this year. I think they win the Big Ten West. I think that victory over Wisconsin's a tiebreaker. I do think Wisconsin's a better record. I think Wisconsin's 10-2. Nebraska's 9-3 because I have Nebraska losing to Oklahoma. But I think Nebraska wins the conference. I have Iowa 8-4. I think Iowa will be solid as always. Good on the line of scrimmage, physical. But then they'll just lose a couple games here and there. They'll lose to Nebraska at the end. They'll lose to Wisconsin. And I think it'll be enough to keep them outside of repeating. Because remember, they won the West last year. So they'll be 8-4. I got Minnesota at 7-5. I'm seeing Minnesota out there picked by some people to win it. I think it's because they have an experienced quarterback, good offensive line, some good running backs. I still question their defense. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think there's enough there. Some of their tougher games on the road. I just don't love how this season sets up for them because of that. And when you're a team that probably relies on having important games be at home because of the advantage of the home field advantage playing in Minnesota, they're just not going to ever beat anyone because they just have better guys out there because they honestly have a roster that is one of the lower ranked rosters even in all the Power Five. So, but PJ Fleck does a great job. I think he'll get his guys ready again. I just think they'll be a 7-5 team. Purdue's a team that'll pull off some upsets. I think I forgot exactly who they have them beaten. I think I have them beating Nebraska. Might even have them beaten one of Iowa or Minnesota. But I think they're 6-6. They lost David Bell. They lost George Kalafkis, who's one of the best defensive players in the Big Ten. I think they're going to drop off a little. And I have Illinois just outside. I think they're a team that can play spoiler. They're a team that can win or can beat Nebraska, can beat Wisconsin, can beat in Iowa. I have them just outside the being bowl eligible at 5-7. Northwestern have at 3-9, but who knows? Pat Fitzgerald every year or two will pull off a 9-3 season, winning the West or competing for it. Will this be a year that he gets back? I don't see the talent, but he's a great coach. He knows how to win. I would not be shocked if he turns them around and gets them into bowl eligibility. I really think the West is pretty close. It's not this great divide. Like, Ohio State's the best. And then even Michigan and Penn State, they're very good. And Michigan State's very good. If I was going to just do my power ranking of the conference, I would say Ohio State 1, Michigan 2, Penn State 3, Michigan State 4. I would not even have my number 5 team in the West until Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin, so you believe it or not, yes, I have Nebraska at number 6, and yet I have them winning the West and playing in the conference. Now, I maybe would actually, I'm going to take that back. I do 1 Ohio State, 2 Michigan. I'll do 3 Penn State, but actually I'll do 4 Wisconsin. I trust Wisconsin a little bit more than Michigan State this year because of Wisconsin just has been more consistently better. And Michigan State lost enough, so I would take Wisconsin over Michigan State. And Wisconsin and Penn State, that's pretty close too. I mean, Wisconsin's been better than Penn State, was better than Penn State last year, but Penn State did beat them. I think Penn State has a little better talent on that roster, but Wisconsin's a little more consistent. I would go Penn State, but it's argued. But for the first 5, I would go in the East. And then you throw in Nebraska at 6. But I have Nebraska pull off the tiebreaker victory over Wisconsin. I went in when I did the predictions. I'm like, I'm going Wisconsin to win the West, Ohio State to win the East. But then when I went game by game, who I had winning, and I'm like, I think Nebraska beats Wisconsin this year. I'm like, well, that gives them the conference title when it all the division title when it all shakes out. So I did not plan that. Anyways, guys, check me out at sportscast.one. Big Ten preview. I'll be doing Pac-12. Excited to talk about that. I think it's going to be an extremely good conference this year. Well, there's a couple of good teams in the conference. The rest of the conference is dog crap. But I think my team, Oregon, Utah, USC, I think could be back a little bit. It'll be fun to watch at least. And UCLA won't be bad. Other than that, team, the conference is not that good. But I think because of Oregon and Utah, I think there's enough separation. I think one of them makes the college football playoff. I predicted in the college football preview, and you'll find out which one it is. All right, guys, check it out.